Okay, welcome to this video. This video is looking at the animation principle of anticipation. Anticipation is where we have an action that winds up before leaping into whatever action we are animating. It creates a slightly more realistic approach. Okay, think of something like the classic example is a punch. When you're punching someone, your hand doesn't just come straight up and out. Okay, first you wind back. Okay, your fist kind of goes backwards first as you rotate your shoulders. Okay, you wind up your punch before going into it. Okay, so there's one example. We're not going to be doing a punch today. Today we'll be simply moving a cube from one side of the screen to the next, but we'll look at how to use anticipation. So to get started, I'm going to click on New Composition. We're going to name this Anticipation. And make sure your frame rate is set to 12 frames per second. And just press OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a shape layer. So again, we're going to use the rectangle tool. And first of all, just draw, we're going to make a little bit of a floor section. So just draw a rectangle at the bottom of the screen. In the timeline on the bottom, I'm just going to right click on shape layer 1 and rename it and call this floor. Now this one, we're just going to use the lock just to lock down that layer because we don't want to make any changes to it. This is just going to stay stationary throughout the animation. Now with that done, I'm going to make another shape layer. Okay, this time I want to change the color of it. Let's have a contrasting color. I'm going to color it blue. And this is going to kind of be our character. We're going to position it on one part of the screen. We're literally going to do some sort of backflip or cartwheel from one side of the screen to the next. Again on the timeline, I'm just going to right click, rename, and call this one character. So those are the two components that we need for this particular example. In the timeline, as always, with this sort of animation, I'm just going to zoom in just so I can see the individual frames to help make me animate a little bit better. And now with the character, we're going to be animating on the position. So I can, with the character selected, click P on my keyboard. And we're also going to be rotating our character. So I'm going to hold Shift and press R on my keyboard so I can make changes to both the position and its rotation. So first of all, we're just going to block in the animation. Now what blocking means is we're going to do just the basic movement first, okay? We don't go in with any details on our first pass, okay? First we block in the animation, we make it basically move, then we can go and edit, and that's when we can add the details into the animation. So we're just going to block in and get the cartwheel working first of all. So with these two, I'm just going to do a keyframe on both of these aspects on the very start. And now we're just going to move over to frame 2. And we're just going to start our cartwheel. So first of all, I can notice here that our anchor point is in the middle of the screen. The anchor point is the position that an object will rotate from, or scale from, or move from. So for now, if I were to rotate, just as an example, it's going to rotate around the pivot, and I don't want it to be there. So we're going to go use the pan behind tool. I could also press Y, and I can just click and drag this, and I want it to be on the very, very center. Oh, let's get rid of that keyframe first of all. I don't want it keyframed, I want it to be at the very start. So let's move it to the very beginning. So I want it on the bottom. We're going to keep it maybe centered on our character. I could move it to either side if I wanted to, but for now, for ease of use, I'm just going to keep it centered. Now I can go to the selection tool and let's move the character back into position. The anchor point is going to stay where it is now. Move over to 2 frames. First of all, I'm just going to rotate it. So it's going to rotate. I'm going to do a cartwheel. So I'm just going to rotate and move into sort of position. So that can be our first one as he kind of just starts to roll. And 2 frames later, I need it to kind of continue to roll, but it's going to swap. It's going to go for the air and cartwheel. So Just going to rotate it a little bit more first of all. Okay, how's that looking? That's looking okay. It's looking like a cartwheel. It's moving from one, from his leg, if you will, to his hand. Great. Let's go 2 frames and let's continue that momentum onwards. Let's see, is that in the right position? Cool, it's going to fly through the air. And then lastly, he's going to land back onto his feet. Cool, so let's set our play range so we can test it. I'm going to press B on my keyboard, go to the very end, press N, and now we just loop that animation. And that's looking like a basic cartwheel. So that's now looking great. So next, as I say, we just need to make this look a little bit better. But first of all, I think it'd be maybe nice if we get him to go back to the opposite side of the screen. So he goes back and forth. So to make this easier, all I'm going to do is just copy these keyframes over to the other side. So I'm going to select these 2 at the end, Control and C. We'll make him wait a few frames first of all. Okay, and then he's going to start moving. So again, I can just copy and paste. Okay, we'll go for the same speed, go for every single 2 seconds. Sorry, 2 frames, not 2 seconds. And now when I play it, it should cartwheel to one side and cartwheel back again. Fantastic. So this is what we mean by blocking in. Okay, it's got the basic there of the animation. Okay, it's moving from one end to the next, but there's no details animated into it. It's just the basic movement down. Now I can go in and let's apply that animation principle. So anticipation. Right now it goes from this standing position to just going straight into a cartwheel. And if we were to apply some anticipation, you should sort of wind back first before leaping forward. So that's what we're going to need to add in. So what I'm going to do first of all is just give myself some room to work in. I'm going to select all of the frames apart from the first one. Let's just move these to one side. Now just so I've got a bit of room here to kind of animate what I need to. So I'm going to go from this starting position and I want him to kind of lean back. So I'm just going to copy these first 2 frames and let's try after 2 frames. Okay, but now this time I want him to be leaning backwards. So let's rotate this way first of all. So he winds up. Okay, he's going to hold that. This is one thing about anticipation, right? If you want to really convey kind of energy transferring, okay, from one direction to the next, like with a punch, for example, you really want to have that snap of that animation going forward. So what we need to do for anticipation is hold frames, okay, because if he just moves straight away, then it's not really transferring energy. Okay, it's not really showing anticipation. The anticipation is you're waiting for it. You're waiting for the next action to start. So I'm going to copy these frames. I'm going to hold it for about 4 frames first of all. So now it's going to wind up and it's going to wait for 4 frames before then moving forward. Okay. So now that I've done that, let's bring back the other frames. And now it's going to lean back, wait 4 frames, and then start the barrel roll. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Great. So now you can see straight away. Let's just hold the end frame. If we look at both of these together, we can see how this first one, as he leans back and then starts going, it brings a little bit more character to it rather than the second one when he just starts rolling straight away. Okay. The first example looks far more realistic, and if we wanted to, we could include some other animation principles. Okay, so you can include things like squash and stretch, okay, that we've already covered in a previous lesson to kind of help with this. Okay, and then also maybe at the end as well, we could add some follow through and overlapping action, which is another animation principle that we'll be covering as well. So you can really combine multiple animation principles that we've learned to really help inside this. So this is what I want you to do next. You're going to include a little bit of anticipation. Okay, so I've done it on one side. You'll need to do it on the other side as well. Okay, so again, you would need to do what I did and move these frames over, and then you can simply copy and paste, but then obviously move him to be this other direction. Okay, again, you want to hold that for a number of frames. Let's move these a little bit out. Okay, I'm really going to hold this one actually. Let's really get him to really exaggerate the anticipation. The more that you use anticipation, the more you hold it, the more tension it creates. And that's what creates the excitement. Cool. So you see, the longer you hold it, it kind of creates a little bit more tension inside of the movement. So yeah, you can have a play with it. Also, what I could do as well is to really exaggerate it. I could have him hold it, and then just before he goes, have another little movement. Okay, so I'm just going to again move him just a little bit more. Okay, so it's going to hold it, and then kind of it has a bit of a spring. He holds it, and then springs back. So see how it's almost like imagine like an elastic band when you used to flick them off your finger. I don't know if you ever did that in high school, and you kind of had that little tension, and then quickly you pull back and let go again. It's kind of that aspect. He's pulling back and going, which is the whole idea behind anticipation. So this is your next example that you're going to make for me. You're going to have him cartwheeling from one side to the next and back again, and really try and experiment with that anticipation.